Picture a nutritionist sitting down with a meal plan, not theirs, someone else's. They look at the daily breakdown: salt pork, hardtack, black coffee, pinto beans. Repeat every single day for 3 months straight. No fruit, no vegetables, no vitamin C worth measuring. They run the numbers. Vitamin C intake, roughly 2% of the minimum required to prevent tissue damage. Sodium, somewhere between 2 and 3 times the modern recommended daily limit. Calories are there, but in terms of what those calories carry with them, this diet is close to a clinical disaster. That meal plan belonged to a cowboy on an 1870s cattle drive. I've dug into what frontier cowboys actually ate on the trail, not the campfire mythology, but the documented provisions, the real nutritional content, and what modern dietary science tells us about what those men were putting into their bodies for months at a stretch. And what I found is genuinely strange, because by every modern measure, the cowboy trail diet was a slow-motion nutritional emergency, and yet, buried inside all of that, the cowboys had stumbled onto something that nutrition science wouldn't be able to explain for another 50 years. Let me walk you through it. The cattle drive era ran from roughly 1866 to 1886. In those 20 years, an estimated 10 million head of cattle were pushed north from Texas to the Kansas railheads: Abilene, Dodge City, Ellsworth. A typical trail crew was 10 to 12 men, a trail boss, 8 drovers, a horse wrangler, and the most important man on the outfit, the cook. The cook mattered more than almost anyone appreciated. Those men lived and, in some cases, died by what came out of that chuck wagon. The chuck wagon itself was invented in 1866 by Texas rancher and former ranger Charles Goodnight. He took an Army surplus Studebaker wagon, the same iron axle design the U.S. military relied on, and bolted a hinged wooden chuck box to the rear. Shelves, drawers, a lid that dropped flat to become a work table. Inside, cast iron Dutch ovens, skillets, spices, and provisions enough to feed 10 men for 30 days between resupply stops. On the trail, the cook ranked second only to the trail boss. Cowboys would do favors for Cookie to get a little extra at night. That tells you everything about how the food situation actually felt from the inside. So, what was in that chuck box? Ramon F. Adams spent decades collecting and documenting cowboy life. His 1952 book, Come and Get It, The Story of the Old Cowboy Cook, published by the University of Oklahoma Press, is about as close as we get to a primary record of what trail outfits actually ate. The core ration was this: salt pork or bacon, pinto beans, hardtack or sourdough biscuits, and black coffee. That's the foundation. Everything else, dried fruit, canned tomatoes on better-equipped wagons, occasional fresh beef from animals that had fallen behind the herd, was supplemental and unreliable. Now let me run each of those staples through a modern nutritional lens, because that's where this gets uncomfortable. Salt pork first. This was not the bacon you'd recognize from a modern grocery store. It was pork belly or fatback cured in dense salt brines, sometimes so aggressively salted it had to be soaked in water for hours before cooking, or eating it straight would make you sick. Modern analysis of heavily cured pork products shows sodium content ranging from roughly 800 to over 1,300 milligrams per 3-ounce serving. The current recommended daily maximum for sodium is 2,300 milligrams total. Cowboys were eating multiple servings of this daily, often in Texas summer heat, pushing cattle, sweating hard, dumping electrolytes they could not replace. High sodium on a physically stressed, dehydrated body hits the kidneys and cardiovascular system in ways the cowboys had no way to understand, and no way to reverse out on the trail. Hardtack next. The recipe hasn't changed since the Civil War. 6 parts flour, 1 part water, baked until rock hard. It can last months without spoiling. That's the entire point. Nutritionally, it delivers calories and almost nothing else. No vitamin C, minimal fiber of any real significance. After a few weeks on the trail, weevils would get into the hardtack. The Cowboys called it worm castles and soaked it in coffee or bean broth and ate it anyway. It kept them alive. That's the most flattering thing you can say about it. Coffee. Cowboys drank roughly 6 to 8 cups a day. They called it six-shooter coffee, strong enough to float a pistol. Grounds went into boiling water. When the pot filled up, you poured in a cup of cold water to settle them to the bottom. Caffeine is a mild diuretic. On a body already sodium-stressed and fluid-depleted, 6 to 8 cups of black coffee a day adds another pressure to the dehydration equation. Zero nutritional value beyond keeping a man awake through night shifts. The Cowboys needed it for exactly that reason, but their bodies weren't being thanked for it. Now the vitamin C picture. This is where the forensic case gets stark. Pinto beans contain approximately 1 to 2 milligrams of vitamin C per cup cooked. The adult male recommended dietary allowance for vitamin C, established by the Institute of Medicine, is 90 milligrams per day. On the core trail ration of salt pork, hardtack, beans, and coffee, a cowboy was getting roughly 2 milligrams a day, about 2% of what the body requires to maintain healthy tissue. Here is what the clinical picture looks like on near-zero vitamin C. According to a published research in the journal BMC Nutrition and peer-reviewed clinical literature, the body's vitamin C pool depletes within 4 to 12 weeks of inadequate intake. Clinical symptoms such as fatigue, weakness, joint pain, bleeding gums, and wounds that won't close cleanly begin appearing after 8 to 12 weeks of deficient intake. Cowboys and trail bosses documented men going poorly on long drives, moving slow, looking gray, losing strength. Frontier medicine had no framework for what was happening. They called it trail sickness, exhaustion, bad constitution. From a modern standpoint, what they were describing was subclinical scurvy, progressing in slow motion across men who had no concept of vitamins, because vitamin science as a discipline didn't exist until Casimir Funk coined the term vitamin in 1912. And vitamin C specifically wasn't chemically identified until Albert Szent-György's work in 1928. The Frontier Army documented the same progression in explicit medical records. At Fort Rice in Dakota Territory, Army surgeon logs from the winter from 1866 to 1868 show scurvy as the leading cause of death by March. At Fort Stevenson, Colonel Regis de Trobriand noted in his diary entry of April 8, 1968, that so many of his men were sick, he was unsure he could put a fighting force in the field. Before the first supply steamboat arrived that spring, soldiers were out on the plains gathering wild onions just to get something, anything, with vitamin C into their diet. The military diet was nearly identical to the trail diet. The outcome was the same. This is where I find this history genuinely strange, because the Cowboys had no physician diagnosing them, no nutritional chemistry to consult. And yet, buried in the middle of all that dietary inadequacy, they had developed a preparation that modern analysis now recognizes as a meaningful source of the micronutrients their base diet was failing to supply. They didn't know why they craved it. Their bodies did. The dish was called son of a gun stew, in polite company anyway. When a calf was slaughtered on the trail, Cookie didn't just take the muscle meat. Ramon F. Adams documents the contents of the stew in Come and Get It with specificity. Everything went in: the heart, liver, tongue, brains, sweetbreads, that's the thymus gland, kidneys, and the ingredient Adams specifically identifies as the key to the dish, the marrow gut. This is a tube connecting two of the calf's stomachs, present only in unweaned calves, filled with a substance that resembles marrow, all of it into a Dutch oven, simmered 4 to 6 hours. Here is what modern nutritional analysis of those same organs reveals. Beef liver, even with its very low vitamin C content of roughly 1 to 2 milligrams per 100 grams, delivers an extraordinary density of other deficiency. Critical nutrients. Vitamin A at over 550% of the daily value per serving, vitamin B12 at more than 2,400% of the daily value, and significant iron and folate. Beef kidney provides approximately 9 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams, along with high concentrations of B12, riboflavin, and selenium. Beef spleen, one of the organs present in mixed offal stews, contains roughly 45 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams according to USDA data, making it one of the most concentrated animal-based sources of vitamin C known to nutritional science. The brain and thymus gland also contain meaningful amounts of vitamin C alongside fat-soluble vitamins and polyunsaturated fats. A full organ stew pulling from all of these tissues was delivering a broad spectrum of B vitamins, minerals, and vitamin C that the beans and hardtack baseline simply could not. Adams quotes the trail cooks directly on this in Come and Get It. People who should know say that SOB stew provided vitamins that were not contained in the everyday fare of beans and biscuits. If you pay attention, your body will tell you what it needs. The Cowboys would develop a craving that only SOB stew could satisfy. They weren't being dramatic. A body running on near zero vitamin C for weeks develops genuine physiological drive toward the compounds it's depleted of. Cowboys, through accumulated trial and error across decades of trail driving, had landed on the one preparation that partially corrected their deficiency, without a laboratory, without a doctor, without any concept of what a vitamin was. What they called a craving, modern nutritional science calls deficiency-driven nutrient seeking. Same phenomenon, different century. The cattle drive era wound down in the mid-1880s. Railroads reached deep into Texas and made the months-long drives unnecessary. Refrigeration changed how meat moved. The chuck wagon became nostalgia. But the nutritional emergency it represented didn't simply disappear with it. The documented scurvy epidemics at frontier army posts through the 1860s and 1870s were part of the evidence base that eventually drove the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 and the early USDA nutritional research programs that followed. Cowboys didn't know any of that. They just knew cookies stew made them feel human again, after weeks of biscuits, salt pork, and coffee. There's something worth sitting with in this. The frontier trail diet was, by modern standards, a documented nutritional crisis. And yet embedded inside that crisis was a piece of genuine dietary intelligence, organ meat as instinctive micronutrient supplementation that we can only fully explain now because we have the science to name what was happening. The Cowboys figured it out through their bodies. That's not mythology, that's forensics.